Cleamon Demone Johnson. Big Evil. He was one of the most feared gang leaders in Los Angeles history. Cops described him as the coldest, most ruthless killer the city had ever seen.
Evil.
Big evil.
What did you do to earn it?
Can't say. Statute of time limitations haven't run out on that yet.
Born October 15, 1967, he grew up in a stable home with loving parents on 88th Street. His childhood was filled with family dinners, Boy Scouts, and even camping trips, but the rise of the Crips in the early 1970s changed everything. By age 8, Cleamon witnessed his first murder when a friend was gunned down in front of him. Violence soon became part of daily life. At Drew Middle School, Cleamon gained a reputation for fearlessness after brutally defending younger kids from a Crip bully. That fight marked the start of his pull into the streets. Though his parents tried to steer him straight, the pressure of growing up surrounded by rival Crip sets pushed him toward the newly formed 89 Family Bloods. Known for his fighting skills, he quickly earned respect, and as the gang war intensified, he turned to guns. He eventually created his own violent crew, the 88 Monsters.
Evil was a serial killer.
No doubt.
Man, I done chased that
Allegedly.
from Russell Elementary all the way over to here.
Allegedly, though.
Well, you don't get serial killer if you got somebody else killing somebody.
By the late 80s, Cleamon had become the shot caller for the 89 Family Swan Bloods, building them into one of the city's deadliest gangs. Police say the murder rate in their territory was 9 times higher than the rest of Los Angeles. Detectives called him the most cold-blooded killer in the city, noting his ability to strategize ambushes and outmaneuver police. He officially admitted to at least 13 murders, though investigators believe he committed over 20. Witnesses who dared to testify often turned up dead.
In the 80s and 90s, Johnson was a notorious leader of the 89 Family Bloods gang. Police have linked him to 20 murders and called him the most cold-blooded killer in the city.
Despite repeatedly beating murder charges, he was finally convicted in the mid-1990s after a gang associate testified against him. Sentenced to death, Big Evil has spent decades on San Quentin's death row, his legend cemented in LA's violent history. Kody Dejohn Scott. Monster Kody was one of Los Angeles' most notorious gang members. Born November 13, 1963, he grew up in South Central in a troubled home. His father, Ernest Scott, abused both him and his mother while showing favoritism to his other children. After his parents divorced, Kody's mother moved the family into a gang-heavy neighborhood near 69th and Denker. With little supervision, Kody gravitated to the streets and came under the influence of Stanley Tookie Williams, founder of the West Side Crips.
Do you have any idea how many people you've killed?
No, I don't even know.
But you remember doing it?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I was engaged in a war, and the rules of engagement were kill or be killed,
At just 13 years old, he earned the nickname Monster after brutally beating a man until he was unrecognizable.
Where did Monster come from?
The name?
Yeah.
Because America produced me, but the name came from a beating that I had given the guy. The dude hit me in the face, and then we chased him and beat him and stomped him and disfigured him. And the pigs, police, were saying that whoever had did this to this cat was a monster.
Soon after, he became a central figure in the deadly war between the 8-Tray gangster Crips and the Rollin' 60s Crips, responsible for numerous shootings and killings. At age 16, rumors spread that he mutilated an enemy and kept body parts as trophies.
Monster Kody did an interview, and he said that he brought somebody's arm.
You mean to tell me that story is real?
Yes, that was Jay Blake's arm. It was real. He did bring an arm back. They chopped him up and put him in front of Jefferson High School.
He survived a near-fatal ambush in 1981 when Rollin' 60s members shot him 6 times. His younger brother, Lil Monster, carried out revenge killings while Kody recovered. Despite his violent reputation, prison gave him time to reflect. He began reading about Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, and revolutionary politics, which reshaped his worldview. In 1993, while in Pelican Bay, he wrote Monster, the autobiography of an LA gang member, giving the world an unfiltered look into LA gang life. The book became a classic and influenced artists like Tupac Shakur, with whom Kody built a friendship and shared visions of uplifting Black communities. Later, Kody wrote additional works, including Thug Life and Stand Up, Struggle Forward. but despite attempts to change, he faced repeated arrests. On June 7, 2021, he was found dead in a tent in Oceanside, California at age 57. Tiequon Cox. Lil Fee, born December 1, 1965, grew up in a home marked by violence, abuse, and instability. His mother battled addiction and mental illness, while his father played no real role in his life. By age 6, he was placed with a strict great-grandmother, but years of trauma had already shaped him. Light-skinned with green eyes, he stood out in South Los Angeles and was often bullied, which hardened him early. At 14, Cox joined the Rollin' 60s Crips, one of LA's largest and most feared gangs, taking the name Lil Fee after an older member.
This particular young man was enamored with the gang. He was a talented athlete, but he was incorrigible. He didn't like the rule. He didn't want to follow the rule. He wanted to do it his way. So eventually, he ended up in a gang.
His violence escalated quickly, robbing classmates, carjacking, and eventually serving time at the California Youth Authority. There, he bulked up, earned his GED, and kept a reputation for toughness. Released in 1984, Lil Fee immediately returned to the streets. That summer, he clashed with rival A-Tray gangster crip Monster Kody, engaging in a shootout that left several people wounded.
I got out that year. I got out in 84. I got out white in 1984. And I got a shootout with Lil Fee. I believe we had a shootout. He ended up getting captured with a strap. I ended up getting captured for that shootout because 3 people got shot.
Then just days after, on August 31, 1984, he participated in what became known as the 59th Street Massacre. Mistaking the address of a rival, Lil Fee and 2 accomplices entered the home of Ebra Alexander, mother of ex-NFL player Kermit Alexander, and executed her, her daughter, and 2 grandchildren. His palm print at the scene and the murder weapon tied him to the crime.
A gunman looking at her. 3 shots are fired, literally blowing her skull off. Then they went to the front room where his sister, Dejohn, who was 24 and about to get married, and 2 of his nephews, Damon and Demone, were asleep. And Dejohn was shot 3 times. Each of the boys in their sleep shot through the head.
In 1987, Cox was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. On San Quentin's death row, he remained violent, stabbing inmates, clashing with Crip founder Stanley Tookie Williams, and even attempting attacks on guards. Feared by both enemies and allies, Lil Fee's life reflects how childhood trauma, gang culture, and unchecked violence produced one of California's most infamous killers, now serving decades on death row. Freeway Rick Ross. Freeway Rick Ross. He was born January 26, 1960 in Texas and raised in South Central Los Angeles, became one of the most notorious drug kingpins of the 1980s. His nickname came from both his family's home near the 110 freeway and his real estate holdings along the 101. Ross grew up poor but showed early hustle. A promising tennis career collapsed when recruiters discovered he was illiterate, leaving him with few options. Introduced in the late 1970s, he quickly realized selling it was far more profitable than using it. His business skills and connections soon linked him to Oscar Danilo Blandon, a supplier tied to the Nicaraguan Contras. Blandon sold him cheap, high-purity which Ross cooked into crack and distributed on a massive scale.
At my height, from 84 to 86, I was doing at least $1 million every day, and then I had days I'd do as much as $3 million.
By his early 20s, Ross was a millionaire. At his peak, his network operated in over 40 U.S. cities. Between 1982 and 1989, he moved 3 metric tons of earning an estimated $900 million, over $2 billion today. He employed thousands, kept a low profile, and even reinvested in his community with youth programs, though crack devastated the neighborhoods he profited from.
When I started selling drugs, because I wanted to create businesses for me and my friends. You know, we couldn't get jobs. Nobody would hire us.
Ross's empire would crumble in the late 1980s under intense law enforcement pressure. He served time in 1990, was released in 1992, then was set up in a DEA sting by Blandon, now a federal informant, and sentenced to life. While incarcerated, Ross taught himself to read, discovered a legal technicality, and had his sentence reduced. He was released in 2009 after 14 years. His case drew national attention when journalist Gary Webb's Dark Alliance series linked Ross's supply to contract Contra and CIA operations, sparking controversy despite official denials. Since his release, Ross has reinvented himself as an author, activist, and motivational speaker, advocating prison reform and warning youth against the drug trade. Stanley Tookie Williams. Tookie Williams, born in 1953 in New Orleans, grew up in South Central Los Angeles after his father left the family. With his mother working multiple jobs, he spent much of his youth on the streets, gaining a reputation for toughness and frequenting juvenile detention. By his teens, he was already feared for his size and fighting ability. In the early 1970s, Williams teamed up with Raymond Washington to form the Crips, a gang originally intended to protect their community, but which quickly became one of the most violent and dominant gangs in Los Angeles. Their rise triggered the creation of rival gangs, most notably the Bloods, sparking a deadly gang war that has claimed thousands of lives. Williams became infamous for his violent reputation and was feared across the city. Despite once holding a legitimate job as a youth counselor, he lived a double life as a gang leader. In 1981, he was convicted of 4 murders during robberies at a 7-Eleven and a Los Angeles motel, crimes he always insisted he did not commit. He was sentenced to death and sent to San Quentin State Prison. In prison, Williams initially continued gang activity, serving years in solitary confinement, but by the late 1980s, he began to transform. After deep reflection, he renounced his gang past and dedicated himself to anti-gang activism.
And together, we can put an end to this cycle that creates deep pain in the hearts of our mothers, our fathers, and our people who have lost loved ones to this senseless violence.
He wrote 9 books for children, warning them against gangs, drugs, and violence, and even spoke to schools directly from death row. His efforts earned multiple Nobel Peace Prize nominations and worldwide recognition.
Hi, my name is Marianne.
Hello, Marianne.
Hey, my question is, your book talks about transformation. How do we know it's sincere?
My work speaks for itself. It took years and years for me to experience a change. I started off reading a lot. It opened up a new world for me, and in time, I developed a conscience.
Despite international campaigns for clemency, Williams was executed by lethal injection in 2005. His final words emphasized redemption, declaring, "Redemption is tailor-made for the wretched." Today, Tookie is remembered both as a co-founder of the Crips and as a man who sought redemption by steering others away from the life he once lived. Sylvia Nunn. Rambo Nunn. She came of age in 1970s and 80s Compton, in the heart of the war between Bloods and Crips. She wasn't born into chaos. Her family had stability with 2 parents, steady income, and her father Willie, a boxer and marksman who taught his children to fight. Her older brother, Marcus China Dog Nunn, co-founded the Looters Park Pyrus, one of the most feared blood sets.
My dad told me, I'm gonna teach you everything that a woman needs to know. You ain't gonna need a man but for one thing, and that's the bedroom.
In 1973, when her father was locked up, the shield over the family disappeared. Sylvia was just 16 when Crips made a mistake that changed her life. They shot Marcus. He survived, but Sylvia snapped. That night, she grabbed her father's gun and the teenager turned into a soldier. She went on missions, hit enemy territory, and earned her name Rambo, not as a nickname, but as a warning.
I'm laying up in my bed, and I hear all these gunshots. And I took off running, and he was just laying there bleeding. And I was saying, "Marcus, Marcus!" And I got mad. I was hurt. I was bitter. And I was ready to shoot you. I was ready to kill you.
In a world where women weren't expected to be soldiers, Sylvia broke the mold. She wasn't tagging along. She was kicking in doors, firing from rooftops, and striking fear into Crips across Compton. Fueled by both vengeance and crack, she became cold, tactical, and relentless. She led missions like a commander, her reputation spreading faster than her footsteps. Even among men, Sylvia was feared and respected. By the early 80s, her legend was set, but the war took its toll. In 1991, after police pressed her for information, tragedy struck again. Her oldest brother, Junior Nunn, was murdered, even though he wasn't in the gang. Soon after, Sylvia left Compton, reappearing in Las Vegas as Sylvia Hardman, married to a former sheriff. She found faith, declaring, "I put down Pyru and picked up Jesus." She passed away in 2010, but her sister, Cynthia Nunn, founded a nonprofit in her honor. Sylvia's life remains both a cautionary tale and a symbol of how vengeance, survival, and redemption collide in the streets of Compton. Brian Bennett, Waterhead Beau, originally from Detroit but raised in South Central Los Angeles, rose from working as a supermarket stock boy to becoming one of the biggest crack kingpins of the 1980s. By his early 20s, he built a historic partnership with Mario Ernesto Villabona Alvarado, a Colombian tied to the Cali cartel. This was the first documented case of a major cartel supplier working directly with a black street dealer. Through this alliance, Bennett was supplied with massive amounts of up to 1,000 kilograms a week, which he processed into crack and pushed nationwide. Between late 1987 and 1988 alone, his organization moved nearly 15,000 kilograms, generating tens of millions monthly. He bought kilos for $9,000 to $10,000 and flipped them for $11,000 to $13,000. At its height, the operation grossed about $10 million a week.
Waterhead Beau, and it is on the streets, police say. He made a fortune. It is alleged that Bennett, with Colombian-born accomplice Mario Villabona Alvarado, brought 1,000 kilograms of more than a ton of it every week. It is alleged their ill-gotten gains were laundered in Denmark. It is there that local authorities, through wiretaps, blew the whistle on the organization.
Bennett's network stretched from Los Angeles to Detroit, Chicago, New York, Memphis, and beyond, fueling what officials described as franchised crack operations in more than 25 U.S. cities. He supplied major figures like Washington, D.C.'s Rayful Edmond, who received up to 500 kilos a month, and Michael Harry O. Harris in Los Angeles, who used drug proceeds to fund legitimate ventures, including Death Row Records. To wash profits, Bennett and Villabona ran check-cashing businesses and funneled millions overseas through banks in Denmark, Italy, and Panama. Wiretaps abroad later exposed their global operations. The empire collapsed in November 1988 after major drug and cash seizures, including $70 million worth of Missouri and $5.4 million in Detroit. Bennett, then just 24, was arrested in Arizona alongside Villabona in California. Both faced kingpin charges carrying mandatory life sentences, and authorities seized $45 million in assets. After serving 24 years, Bennett was released in 2012. Now low profile, he mentors youth and acknowledges that parts of his story inspired characters like Franklin in Snowfall. Michael Harris. Harry O., known as the Godfather of South Central, rose from Los Angeles' low bottoms to become one of the most powerful drug kingpins of the 1980s. Standing 6'5" and commanding respect, he built a multi-million-dollar empire that united Bloods and Crips, moved 200-pound shipments across the U.S., and generated nearly $2 million a day. His reputation as a strategist and businessman extended beyond the streets. He even funded Broadway productions' incarceration. In 1987, Harris's empire collapsed after convictions for attempted murder and operating a continuing criminal enterprise. Sentenced to 33 years, he spent time on death row at San Quentin, deemed too high level for general population. Yet even behind bars, Harris's influence remained strong.
Before I went away, I did 33 years. Before I went away, I used to be involved in club promotion. I used to do plays, national plays.
In 1991, while serving time, Harris met Suge Knight through his attorney, David Kenner. Seeking financing for a label with Dr. Dre, Knight struck a deal with Harris, who invested $1.5 million to launch Godfather Entertainment, with Death Row Records as a subsidiary.
Death Row Records.
You started as the co-founder for Death Row, right?
Yeah, we want to break that down.
Please. Yeah, break that down. So who were all the co-founders? I mean, my mind is you, Suge, and I don't know who else.
Dr. Dre. So we originally created a company called Godfather Entertainment, which was the parent company of Death Row Records.
Harris's wife, Lydia, handled operations while he remained a consultant from prison, maintaining a 50% stake. Harris even coined the name Death Row, inspired by his own time in San Quentin, seeing it as a warning and a platform for real stories from the streets. From prison, Harris managed business calls through the infamous Harry-O phone, a dedicated black line installed at Death Row's studio. Its authority was absolute. Suge Knight once faced assault charges for punishing rappers who dared to use it. Harris's early backing launched the careers of Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Tupac, with the Chronic, Doggy Style, and All Eyes on Me defining West Coast hip-hop and globalizing gangsta rap. Over time, Harris's relationship with Knight soured, with Knight allegedly cutting him out and blocking contact. In 2002, Lydia Harris sued Knight, ultimately winning a $107 million judgment that bankrupted Death Row. After serving decades in prison, Harris was granted clemency in 2021 by President Donald Trump. Returning full circle, he rejoined the music industry, partnering with Snoop Dogg to help revive Death Row Records, this time as Chief Operating Officer. George G. Williams. George Williams, also known as Ponytail or Monkey Man, was one of Compton's most feared gangsters. Born in 1965 and raised in Looters Park, Piru, he quickly gained a reputation for being ruthless, calculated, and consistent. By the late 1980s, police and gang members alike regarded him as a professional hitman, the #1 most reputable gangster from Compton.
Who is George Williams?
George Williams was a mob Piru, and the guy was a hitman. He's a straight killer. He was the real deal.
Williams entered the orbit of Suge Knight in the early 1990s, becoming the quiet but deadly enforcer at Death Row Records. Always present at Can-Am Studios, he was Suge's shadow, paid to carry out beatdowns and hits, enforcing a violent aura that surrounded the label. His presence made Death Row as much a street stronghold as a music powerhouse. Tensions arose when Williams felt underpaid compared to other hitmen like Poochie, who received houses and expensive gifts. After being ambushed, beaten, and shot by Suge's crew in what was meant as a kill order, Williams survived and switched allegiances. He flipped flags, aligning with a rival Fruittown Piru, and launched a personal war against Suge and Death Row. What followed was a bloody campaign of retaliation. Williams, backed financially by PCP kingpin Lil Rod, recruited allies and executed rivals with military precision. Victims were often gunned down with AK-47s in public, riddled with dozens of bullets as a calling card of overkill. Targets included Suge's closest allies: Heron, ambushed and killed in traffic; Alton Buntry McDonald, Mob James's brother, executed at a gas station; Suge's designer Hogg, and several other Mob Piru figures. Each killing chipped away at Death Row's power and terrorized Suge's circle, leaving police convinced the violence was no coincidence.
Well, the person who is rumored to have killed your brother Buntry, well, is George Williams, aka Monkey Man.
Ultimately, law enforcement couldn't pin the murders on Williams. Instead, a 2005 federal case tied him and Lil Rod to a massive PCP manufacturing and distribution ring, netting 175 kilograms of drugs, weapons, and cash. Williams was sentenced to life but unexpectedly released in 2021 after about 19 years. Today, he keeps a low profile. Alberto Von Cotto. OG Santa Claus. He was a legendary figure in the Rollin' 20s neighborhood Bloods. Born in 1970 in Inglewood's Rogers Park, he joined the Rollin' 20s at 16 and quickly made his name through bold, fearless displays. His flamboyant, flamed-up red attire became a signature, and he was notorious for public fights with rival Crips, including mass brawls and organized step-up fights. Santa Claus became infamous for his war with the Harlem Crips. He was said to have robbed and attacked so many of them that they began carrying guns just to defend themselves. His reputation grew darker with the so-called Christmas killings, an annual ritual where he allegedly hunted and killed rivals during the holidays, cementing his chilling nickname. Despite surviving assassination attempts, including a 1981 drive-by that left him shot but not broken, Claus only grew bolder. His defiant return to Harlem territory days later, with a red rag over his head, made him a feared figure across South Central. By 1980, Santa Claus was a shot caller, expanding the Rollin' 20s into 4 powerful cliques and solidifying one of the largest blood territories in Los Angeles. He was both strategic and ruthless, using disguises, alliances, and surprise attacks to destabilize Crip sets. His violent raids on rival homes and parties reinforced the myth of his untouchability. His reign ended in 1993, shortly after his release from prison. That January, Santa Claus was murdered, not by Crips, but by a Jamaican weed dealer he had allegedly robbed. The Rollin' 20s launched massive revenge strikes across multiple Crip neighborhoods, but the true killer vanished. Raymond Lee Washington. Raymond Washington, born in Los Angeles in 1953, co-founded the Crips and reshaped gang culture in South Central. Known for his physical strength and preference for fistfights over guns, he created a new gang in the late 1960s as older Blackstreet gangs faded. At first called the Baby Avenues, his group became the Avenue Crips and eventually the Crips.
How did Cripping start, based on your experience?
Well, Raymond M. founded the Crips in '69, but a lot of times people say, oh, they spring soft to this or that. They were just a group of men, but they were dormant.
By 1971, Washington pushed for unity among local sets, teaming with Stanley Tookie Williams on West Side and Mac Thomas in Compton. Together, they expanded rapidly, intimidating rivals and absorbing other crews. Washington's signature tactic was challenging rival leaders to one-on-one fights. If he won, their gang had to join the Crips or face violence. This expansion provoked resistance. In 1972, independent sets like the Piru Street Boys formed the Bloods to counter the Crips, igniting LA's most infamous rivalry. Washington's leadership was brutal but charismatic, making him both respected and feared. He was notorious for robberies, assaults, and leading violent campaigns to secure Crip dominance.
I call them founders, because this is between the era of '69 to about '72. Then this is when the Crips started.
Arrested in 1974 for second-degree robbery, he served 5 years at Dual Vocational Institution. Inside, he tried recruiting Crips, but clashed with powerful prison gangs like the Black Guerrilla family. When paroled in 1976, he found the Crips had splintered, and gun violence had replaced his fistfight code. Disillusioned, he drifted from gang life but could not escape his reputation. Though his leadership lasted only a few years, Washington's creation shaped decades of bloodshed. His decision to unify gangs sparked the rise of the Bloods, and his mix of charisma, intimidation, and violence led the blueprint for the Crips structure. Remembered as the godfather of LA gang culture, Washington is seen as both prisoner and tragic figure. Alfonso Hunter, T-Bone. He rose as one of the most feared figures in South Central during the 1980s and 1990s, serving as an enforcer for the Rollin' 30s original Harlem Crips. Based in Jefferson Park, the 30s were locked in bloody wars with the Rollin' 20s Bloods and other rivals. T-Bone embodied the era's brutality, earning a reputation as both a killer and executioner. Law enforcement and gang lore alike linked him to dozens of murders. He was the type of OG who carried out personal hits, drove retaliation shootings, and orchestrated assassinations to enforce Harlem Crip dominance. When the Rollin' 30s went to war with the Rollin' 20s Bloods, T-Bone was often at the center, directing or executing violence. Witness intimidation and lack of evidence made prosecution difficult, but street rumors credited him with a personal body count unmatched by most peers. The 1980s marked South LA's bloodiest years, with drive-bys, ambushes, and retaliatory hits with near-daily occurrence. T-Bone became a symbol of this chaos. His name carried weight not just with rivals, but within his own gang, keeping younger members in line through fear. He was reportedly called in as the Harlem Crips executioner, the one who made examples out of enemies and traitors. Though exact convictions are not documented, his reputation alone turned him into a legendary figure. The Rollin' 30s reputation as one of LA's most violent gangs is partly tied to his reign. Even decades later, LAPD still listed the 30s as a top-tier menace, a legacy traced back to enforcers like T-Bone. Ernest Roybal, Kilroy, born in Boyle Heights in 1939, was a foundational figure in East LA gang culture. As a teenager in the early 1950s, he joined White Fence, one of the city's oldest Chicago gangs. His willingness to use violence quickly made him an enforcer whose name carried weight across the East Side.
I grew up in East LA, Boyle Heights, in a barrio named White Fence. And like most of us, I wanted to be part of something, so I joined a neighborhood gang.
Kilroy's influence grew even larger in prison. In the late 1950s, while incarcerated, he became one of the original founders of the Mexican Mafia, or La M. The group formed to give Mexican-American inmates protection and power behind bars, but under Kilroy and others, it became a ruthless criminal empire. He built a reputation as a padrino, a godfather-like figure feared for ordering hits, punishments, and assaults both inside and outside prison walls. He was central to La M's early enforcement. Kilroy greenlit killings without hesitation, targeting not just rivals, but even fellow members who showed weakness or disloyalty. Stories describe him orchestrating brutal attacks, including on Mo Farrell, as examples of his no-nonsense leadership. On the streets, La M extended influence into barrios, taxing local gangs and ensuring obedience through violence. By the late 1970s, Kilroy had spent decades behind bars, serving time for violent crimes and conspiracies. Yet even inside, his power grew. He mentored young MA recruits, instilling the gang's bloody traditions. His reputation as a ruthless shot caller made him legendary in both East LA and prison politics. What made Kilroy unique was his later transformation. After about 40 years locked up, he left behind the Mexican Mafia without being killed, an almost unheard-of feat. He converted to Christianity, dedicating his later years to warning youth against gang life.
Little did I know at that time that I'd spend the next 40 years living a very violent life. I'm here to tell you there's a better way. Jesus can change and will change lives.
Still, his earlier legacy as a Mexican Mafia pioneer and terror enforcer remains indelible, making him one of the most infamous figures in LA's gang history. Donald Archie. Cupcake. He was one of the most feared OGs of the Bounty Hunter Bloods, the dominant gang in Nickerson Gardens, Watts. His nickname stood in sharp contrast to his reputation: cruel, violent, and ruthless. During the 1980s and 1990s, Cupcake became a top leader and enforcer, symbolizing the BHB's notoriety as one of LA's most violent gangs. His name carried fear in Nickerson Gardens and beyond. He was linked to numerous homicides, with police and street accounts crediting him for dozens of murders, both carried out personally and ordered. His leadership era coincided with Watts' bloodiest gang wars, especially the feud between the Bounty Hunters and the Grape Street Watts Crips in Jordan Downs. These wars spiraled into years of shootings, drive-bys, and revenge killings that terrorized the community. Cupcake was ruthless in enforcing discipline, ordering young members to put in work or personally handling hits. He embodied the gang's violent ethos, where murder was used not just for retaliation, but for maintaining status and control. Stories of his cruelty made him nearly folkloric in Watts, with his name whispered as a warning. The bounty hunters under his watch also clashed with law enforcement. A 1993 case where a BHB member executed two LAPD officers highlighted their reputation as uncontrollable. Authorities described them as one of the most violent gangs in LA history. By the 2000s, civil injunctions and joint LAPD-FBI sweeps targeted the gang, leading to dozens of arrests. Cupcake himself became a prime focus of these operations, though exact convictions remain murky. Sylvester Scott. OG Puddin'. He was born in 1954 in Los Angeles and raised in Compton. Though he started out as a scrawny kid who loved football, he would become one of the most feared men in gang history.
And you had to be careful of that one person Puddin', man, because he had a green 69 Riviera. Whenever we seen a green 69 Riviera, we would run, whatever, because we didn't know if that was Puddin' or not.
In the early 1970s, the Crips were expanding rapidly under Raymond Washington and Tookie Williams, bullying neighborhoods into submission. When Washington and his crew tried attacking Puddin' and his friend Vincent Owens, they fought back, refusing to be intimidated. From that moment, Puddin' founded the Piru Street Boys, claiming territory in Compton. At first loosely tied to the Crips, the Pirus eventually broke away, uniting with other small sets who shared their hatred for Crip dominance. This coalition became the Bloods, with red as their symbol of defiance. Puddin' quickly built a reputation as a ruthless shooter. He personally launched the first major strike against the Crips, a quadruple shooting in 1972 that left one dead and several injured, igniting a bloody war. He became infamous for drive-bys, solo missions, and precision hits, even wounding Tookie Williams in an ambush. His enemies scattered at the sight of a car resembling his.
I know he surprised Tookie. Surprised the heck out of Tookie. over there on Almond Street. Shot him. Tookie didn't expect that.
By the mid-1970s, after losing his close friend Tam to the Crips, Puddin went on a frenzy of retaliatory shootings that cemented his legend. Despite arrests, including a rape charge and later a 1987 drug case, he remained a force. Corruption surfaced in 1991 when he testified against LAPD narcotics officers who framed him and stole drug money. In the late 1980s, Puddin even struck a deal with Compton police to keep the Black Panthers from uniting local gangs, solidifying his control. Later, his tumultuous relationship with Jewel from Death Row Records ended with her shooting him in the chest. Complications from that wound led to his death in 2006 at age 51. Puddin is remembered as the founder of the Piru Boys and a key architect of the Bloods, one of the most feared figures in LA gang history.